So as Mick said, I'm the GM of Marketing and Insights. So my team looks after our domestic marketing program for Australian beef, lamb, goat, veal, etc. We also look after all of the insights globally. That also supports our international markets teams initiatives, and we also look after the industry information service from a prices and markets perspective. I'm not going to talk about any production side insights today. I'm going to focus very much on demand side in terms of what's happening with consumers and customers. For those of you who are interested in talking to us more about our market information services, Ripley Atkinson from our market information team's here today, and Scott and myself will be out in the central area that Lucy just talked about and available for questions, conversations, etc., for that side of things. But today what I'm going to focus on very much is what are we doing in the domestic marketing program on beef and lamb, but what are the insights and data that actually drive why we do the activities that we do and the strategic choices we make to invest in driving specific types of consumer behaviour to position red meat for advantage. Now all the work that Lucy just showed you, that's doing a great job of what we kind of call filling the funnel. It makes eating red meat appealing to people en masse. It helps us with our social license to operate. It puts beef and lamb in people's consideration sets when they walk into a restaurant or a supermarket and they're looking to buy a fresh protein. The work we then do on beef and lamb is very much around positioning ourselves to advantage versus the competitive set. So versus chicken, versus pork, versus seafood, and to a lesser extent versus plant-based protein. And the way we start building those plans is it always starts with the insights and data. And we look at some of the big macro trends that are influencing behaviour, and then we dive deeper into their current shopping and consumption behaviour within the category competitive set. Post-COVID, there's sort of three big macro trends that we think are going to be enduring. Certainly, finding value and buying better was a key focus for people in COVID when there was uncertainty about the future, there was uncertainty about availability, and people were looking to bulk buy and manage household budgets. That's even more important now as we enter an inflationary environment. During COVID, particularly with food service closed down, people expanded their repertoires at home. They started cooking restaurant quality dishes at home. They were experimenting with different cuts of meat to basically mix up that experience because they got sick of having spaghetti bolognese 4 nights a week. We think that will be enduring as well, but for slightly different reasons. So it'll be enduring because people start, in an inflationary environment, people will start substituting dining out occasions for dining in at home, but they're still going to want quality experiences. They're still going to want experiences that feel a little bit special. So we think that behaviour will be enduring. And then a focus on health. Now that trend was already happening pre-COVID, but when you go through a pandemic, your personal health, the health of your family becomes more important than anything else, and people then put disproportionate attention on what they're consuming, what they're putting into their bodies. So health perceptions is something that's really critical for us. So just a little bit on a couple of these factors. On the value piece, Kantar, one of our research providers, just recently published their Global Issues Barometer, and in that there were some really startling statistics. So 80% of Australians saying that they are feeling the heat of inflation, they're really noticing prices changing. 50% of Australians saying they're actually starting to find managing the household budget more difficult. And when you look at the categories where they say they're most noticing price increases, petrol's number one, which is probably not surprising. We drive past petrol prices every single day. And when we go to fill up a tank, we really feel the heat when petrol price is going up. But the second and third most noticed categories were fresh produce and food. So categories we obviously operate in, the part of the supermarket that we're in. And that's really, really top of mind for consumers around what's happening with prices and essentially the increasing cost of the family shop. And they're also starting to adapt their behaviour accordingly. So 35% of Australians have said they've already started adjusting their shopping basket. 25% have said they've started down trading. So it's really important that we understand that behaviour and again position ourselves to advantage when we know that's what people are doing when they're shopping. And even more critical, I actually don't look at this as a negative chart for us. This is an incredibly positive chart. in that over the course of the last 20 years, beef and lamb prices approximately have increased by 250%. But it's really important in context of the relativities versus our competitor set. Chicken prices are largely the same today as they were in 2000. And pork prices have increased roughly at about half the rate of beef and lamb. So it's really, really important that we're playing the value card, but we're actually also building credentials into beef and lamb that make it worth paying more for. Because value isn't necessarily always about cheap. Value is about what is the experience I'm getting, what is the quality of the product I'm getting for the price that I'm paying for it. So that's really important context for us to keep in mind, because we all win when price goes up in the industry, and we want that to stay that way. And then just on health, health is a real driver of consumption in this category. So when we look at reasons for why people eat meat, number one, by far, they like it. Taste, flavour, etc. People love eating red meat. But its health credentials for a portion of the market are well understood, and it's something that builds value into that product. They feel like they're feeding their family a nutritionally superior product. And same data that Lucy showed from the consumer sentiment report, when we look at people who say they're consuming more red meat than they used to, or they intend to consume more red meat, source of iron, source of protein are the clear number one and number two. So health benefits of our product are really, really important for driving increased consumption. It is also a threat in the sense of misperceptions around health concerns, and the nutritional quality of our product is also one of the highest reasons, once you get past price, for why people are intending to consume less. So it's both a trigger and a barrier for consumption. So something really important for us to consider when we're building our marketing plans. So those are a bit on the macro trends and what's sort of happening with the economy and society. When we dive it down into the category itself, and we look at it in the context of our fresh protein competitor set, there's kind of four key insight areas that drive our annual brand marketing plan on beef and lamb. The first one we've called the battle for midweek. What's that about? 84% of shopping occasions are for midweek meals. That is where the battleground is won and lost when it comes to being a mainstream centre of plate protein on the dinner table. So we absolutely need to be competitive, in particular versus chicken, when it comes to the number one shopping occasion around that midweek meal. And with the midweek meal, what's really critical is people are looking for something that's good value. They're looking for something that's easy to prepare, both from a time and capability perspective. You know, that's your spaghetti bologneses, that's your burgers, that's your steaks, it might be sausages and some frozen vegetables, you know, those really basic meals. And beef has a really important role to play there, because one advantage we do have versus our competitor proteins is actually the range of styles of beef that are available, whether that's minced sausages, different cuts of steak, etc. We can play into a wide range of midweek meal occasions. Healthy for, I'm going to go the reverse way around, healthy for you. Naturally, I've just talked about the importance of nutrition. That's a real strong point for us. We have a great story around the nutritional profile of red meat. Lamb is not so much purchased for health reasons. Health is not really a trigger or a barrier to lamb consumption. This one is really very much more about beef. And that's why you'll see we have a beef campaign this year focusing on that. The evolving Australian, that is absolutely something that is affecting the changing demographics of our society, is affecting lamb consumption significantly more than it's affecting beef. And a couple of key stats there. So people of my generation and older, most of us grew up in households where lamb was at least on the dinner table at least once a week. It might have been a Sunday roast, and it was probably on the dinner table more than once a week, because we would have had chops sometime during the week as well. When we look at Australians under 35, that's not the case. They haven't grown up in households where lamb was served weekly, so they're less familiar with it. They have less emotional attachment to it. It's not something they associate with family get-togethers. And when we look at non-Caucasian Australians, so when we look at the data that says, what did you eat last week? 9% of Australians in general had lamb on the dinner table. Non-Caucasian Australians only had it on the dinner table 4%, so less than half. So that changing demographic of society we've got the increasing population that has less connection to lamb than Caucasian Australians. So we really need to make sure that we're balancing our comms across different audiences and ensuring we're giving people different reasons, occasions, and building those relationships with it. Because particularly in an environment where pricing relativities are going up, the risk of that purchase is really high. If you're less familiar with something, then the risk of getting it wrong when you're cooking it is much higher, and it's easier to divert to the same meal that you've served 3 times a week for the last 3 years, because you know you won't stuff that up and you know your family loves it. So really, really important we give Australians more reasons to put lamb on the dining table. And then the last one is the reason why all of us in the room really love beef and lamb. We've just called it for the love of meat. It's all about those sensorial qualities that make our product a premium product. It's the reason why when we have a great steak, we tell our mates about it. You know, the joke that, you know, if we have a great steak or a great lamb shoulder, we tell everyone about it. We've never told anyone about the great chicken we had the night before. So that's a real competitive advantage for us in an environment where we're at a premium price point to our competitive set, and we need to make sure, and one of the reasons why we do a big epic lamb ad every year is to associate that with being the Australian national dish, a culturally important dish, reminding everyone why they love lamb so much. And it's important, particularly in a lot of stuff we do in food service, but also in the stuff we do on mass and marketing to consumers, the way we present the product, the look and feel of our advertising, that it's consistent with the premium positioning we have in the market, because people love all those qualities, the taste, the smell, the look, the flavour, etc. So those are the inside areas that sit behind sort of the 4 key activities I'm going to talk to you about now. So there's 4 big campaigns, 2 on beef, 2 on lamb, that we're running this year. The first one is Say More with Lamb, and this is all about those additional occasions, giving people more reasons to buy lamb. So we have our big epic lamb campaign in January. We start off the calendar year really, really strong. We drive a heap of awareness. We try to own barbecue season. We've got cutlets on everyone's barbecue in January. But throughout the rest of the year, we need to keep coming back with tactical messages. And one cool thing about lamb is it's actually associated with a much broader range of cuisines than most other proteins, whether you're looking Middle Eastern, Indian, Greek, etc. So we're actually using those style of cuisines and those kind of gathering social occasions. So we've just done a Diwali campaign around Indian cuisine. We'll do a Greek Easter campaign next year. We did a midwinter Christmas campaign, and we'll do a Christmas campaign this year. Really just reminding people that lamb is associated with all these cuisines, all these occasions, and it's a great dish to serve when you're entertaining, which is what Say More with Lamb is all about. That premium position we hold, that you show you care more for the people you love by serving lamb. So let's just have a look at a couple of the executions from this campaign.
Keith's lamb tikka says, "You've made me the happiest bloke in the world." The hot dog buns say, "I forgot to buy naan bread." Say More with Lamb. Jen's char-grilled lamb salad says, "Merry Christmas, you bunch of legends." Sarah's frozen pizza says, "I forgot I was doing sides." Say More with Lamb.
So actually a very functional message, but still done with lamb sort of humorous style. And we do use humour quite extensively on lamb because it helps us cut through. It helps people remember the ad. It helps us, break through and capture attention in a very cluttered media environment. And then we also pull that through into retail. So whether that's supermarkets, butcher channel, etc. And one of the very few benefits of COVID, but actually one of the benefits of COVID as a marketer is it brought the QR code back. And what QR codes have allowed us to do is to sticker on pack in retailers, which leads people directly to our website with all the recipes and dishes around those cuisines that can use those different cuts of meat for. So really closing that loop, so drawing attention to all the different occasions and cuisines that lamb's associated with, but then giving our consumers the resources to help enable them to be able to prepare those dishes. And the timing throughout the year is really important. So I mentioned every year we have an epic lamb ad campaign around summer, and all those spikes of awareness are those big epic campaigns. But But we get a drop-off through the rest of the year if we're actually not as active. And the good thing is the first burst of the Say More with Lamb campaign, we normally drop down to around 14, 16, 17. Our awareness is spiked back up to 19 just with the first burst of Christmas in July. And I'm expecting to see it go up again when we get the tracking results of our October burst, which was the Diwali Indian cuisine campaign. So strategically, it's helping us raise the base of lamb affinity in market, so that when we come round to our next summer lamb campaign, we should be even bigger because we're springboarding off a stronger base. Now, we don't normally do this, but because the MLA updates is a special event, we shot the lamb ad last week, so it's not finished. The footage is in the can, the agency is in studio this week, editing it together. And we're going to take people on a bit of a journey from an Australia that is all very familiar to a lot of us, to something that looks like a little bit desolate and a little bit un-Australian as we know it. So I'm not going to tell you what the ad's going to be about. I'll leave that as a surprise. But we've got the standard iconic lamb cutlet scenes. We've got all the humour cues that we associate with lamb, and I think I'm really confident it's going to be another great one for us this year. So there's just a little bit of a teaser of what's to come in the first week of January. The one thing we are doing different this year that we haven't really done before is we're actually going to launch it a couple of days earlier because we're going to run it on TV. We've never run the long form version of the lamb ad on TV before. So in one of the innings breaks of the Sydney Test match, we're actually going to run the whole lamb ad, and we're going to do it again on the first night of the Australian Tennis Open 2 weeks later to make sure we reach as broad a possible audience with this campaign as we possibly can. The Beef at Your Best campaign, this one's really all about reinforcing the nutritional greatness of beef. We had a really successful campaign with our association with the Australian Olympics team, and this year we utilised a professional NRL side, the Brisbane Broncos, to help tell us the story. Why did we use them to tell us the story? A, to help it cut through a little bit, but actually because professional athletes care more about what they put in their body than anyone else on the planet. And it's very believable when a professional athlete is endorsing, if this is good for me, that the average consumer then should not feel guilty about eating our product. And it helps them believe even more that this product is great for you, it's healthy for you, it's a great source of protein, it's a great source of iron, etc. And that's why we developed this campaign in this way. So let's have a look at a couple of the assets.
Sorry, Kevy. I'm Lance Lawson. Round here, I'm known as the General. Come on, Reynolds! Game prep never stops. You know, the right nutrition is essential. That's where beef comes in. Oh, yes, poetry! Well, it's good for muscle strength too, so yeah, full credit to beef.
All right, see you, General.
Not that one, Adam. The other one.
Yep. Sorry, General.
Hi, Captain. I'm Lance. I'm known as the General. For muscle development, you need protein. And beef, it's packed with it. I mean, it's unbelievable the strength these players have. All of them. I'm Lance. I'm known as the General. We got to keep energy levels high. No one ever drowned in sweat. That's why beef's so important, because it's full of iron. Absolutely. Emotional support, it's 24/7. That's it. Dig deep.
So when you're making a 30-second, 15-second ad, there's only so much detail you can pack into that, and you want to keep your message relatively simple. The cool thing that we've been able to do this is we've also been able to tell a whole heap of other longer form stories that we've pushed out through social around, and I'm going to play one at the moment around the importance of nutrition for female athletes, but we've done one for World Iron Awareness Week, also again with female athletes, but we've done one about junior development, so the importance of nutrition for growing kids, and we've told that story through the Broncos junior development systems. We've done one about feeding families and profiling players that have young families and the importance of how do you eat like a professional athlete but be able to have dinner with the rest of your family, and all these different human interest stories, but with beef and the nutritional greatness of beef at the centre of it. So this is one of our longer form content pieces that allows us to dive deeper on the health and nutrition message.
NRLW athletes are unique because we usually train at night time, so therefore the players have to be mentally and physically ready for training, but then they also work and study during the day. They have to be focused for long periods of time.
Female athletes really need to ensure they're eating enough food to give them the energy they need to perform at their best.
Our players need to self-regulate, especially when they're away from the training facilities, because they have to take care of themselves, especially when it comes to their nutrition.
Optimal health is best achieved by eating a well-balanced diet. Grains and cereals provide carbohydrates for energy and high-quality protein for muscle development and maximising recovery. Lean beef is a nutrition powerhouse. It's packed full of high-quality protein and other essential nutrients to help women perform at their best.
Yeah, so there's a series of 7 or 8 of those that allow us to tell those longer form stories about the nutritional greatness of beef. The last campaign that I want to talk about is the You're Thinking Beef campaign. This is our midweek meals campaign. So if you remember when I talked about the insights, number one shopping occasion, and the key thing people were looking for is good value and ease of preparation, basically. How can I get something on the dinner table super quick that my whole family is going to eat because it's delicious and I actually don't have to spend too much money on it? So we've developed the You're Thinking Beef campaign, and the way we developed this was really interesting. We looked at the insights in terms of what are the most searched recipes for Australians when they go onto websites like taste.com.au, etc. 8 of the top 10 recipes either have beef as a central protein or could have beef as a central protein, substituting for other proteins. And we then essentially made a series of short, sharp, simple 15-second ads around those recipes. So we know they're the things that Australian shopping decision makers are actively searching out, and we intentionally chose the line You're Thinking Beef because we want to attach beef to that meal. We want beef to own the high ground, so when you're thinking about that meal, beef is the protein that you're thinking about. And I've just got a couple of quick examples of that for you.
You're seeing sizzling garlic and ginger. You're seeing crisp green veggies and golden noodles coated in oyster sauce. You're seeing a 15-minute stir fry, and you're thinking beef. You're seeing a white bean puree with lemon juice and garlic. You're seeing green beans, seasoning, and a char-grilled pan on medium heat. You're seeing steak and 3 veg, and you're thinking beef.
So really, really simple, and there's a series of 8 of those executions, which are 8 of the top 10 search recipes for Australians. And then like we do with lamb, we pull that through to retail to make sure we drive conversion at store. So people who've seen our campaign, when they're shopping, they get a reminder of that when they're actually purchasing their protein. And we've also been able to pull those recipes through into store with QR code stickers on pack. Briefly want to talk about what we do in food service. So our brand campaigns are probably the stuff that the domestic marketing team is most well known for. The food service stuff exists a little bit under the radar because it's not public, you don't see it in media, and unless Sam Burke is presenting at an industry event that you're at, you probably don't hear a lot of what we do in this space. But we actually also do a lot of insight work to understand what are the challenges that food service professionals, restaurateurs, etc., are facing, and how do we position red meat to advantage to help them with their menu development and their restaurant businesses. So 3 big things that are happening in food service right now that are really challenging for restaurateurs. Number 1, inflation affects them as well. So their input costs, their cost of goods sold are rising significantly across all fresh produce, etc. Labour shortage. There's a shortage of humans to serve, but there's actually also a shortage of skilled humans in that space. So those 2 things together mean that restaurants are looking to simplify their supply chain, which means they're simplifying their menu, and they're trying to simplify what's happening in the kitchen as well. So a smaller list of core dishes that are really popular that minimise the complexity of preparation. So it's really, really important that we understand that when we're developing our programs for food service to ensure that we maximise red meat on menu. And what's really challenging for retail, for food service organisations is whilst that's happening, you're dealing with a consumer who's more discerning and has higher standards than ever because they're paying more in these restaurants than they ever had in the past. So they're expecting a higher quality of experience. So there's some competing forces that are making it really challenging. And in an environment where red meat prices are historically high, great for us, but challenging for these guys because they're trying to manage their margin, they're trying to manage their profitability. But if we can develop the right solutions for them, utilising the carcass, balancing what's on menu, serving consumers what they want, because the advantage we have is they want red meat more than they want other proteins, we can actually deliver solutions to maximise red meat on menu and help these restaurants have success with Australian red meat. And we kind of have 3 programs that support that. So our Rear Medium platform is really designed to inspire, and that plays at the top end because we want to own the high ground within the restaurant food service space. And this is really about showcasing what the trend makers, what the innovators are doing, and ensure we roll that out across the rest of the food service industry. So everyone sees what the best of the best are doing with red meat on menu, red meat over flames, etc. And we tell long-form stories through our Rear Medium e-magazine, and we tell short-form stories through our Rear Medium social media channels. And we work with a number of highly influential chefs in this space to inspire the rest of the food service professional industry. The next piece of our food service program of work kind of takes that down to the next level. So Rear Medium Academy leverages the sort of brand equity of Rear Medium and the awareness of that as an inspiration driver. But we actually do a lot of work around education and learning. So Sam Burke and his team go out and actually train food service professionals in red meat preparation. Why is that important? Because if someone is paying $40 to $50 to $60 for a steak in a restaurant, if that's a pub group or wherever it is, if they have a bad experience, they will not come back. We want them to have great experiences, which means we need the food service professionals preparing that red meat to be experts and know what they're doing. So we invest quite heavily in that. And what also sits under this is we do a lot of innovation work around red meat planning on menu. And a great example of where we've had success is with Australia's biggest pub groups, ALH and AVC. We've done a lot of menu innovation, a lot of training for their head chefs across their pub groups, across their 600 or so venues. But the pictures on the bottom right there are actually 2 of a range of 12 recipes that the business development team developed in partnership with P&O Cruise Lines when cruising came back post-COVID. They hadn't run for 2 years. The price of red meat had gone up, in some cases, when they were looking on a like-for-like basis, 40 to 50%. So they could not afford the menu that they had pre-COVID. They needed to redesign a new menu. We wanted them to keep red meat as a centre of that. Why? Because P&O Cruise Lines sell 800 tonnes of beef and 400 tonnes of lamb a year when they're operating at full capacity. And if we're not on menu, then they're not selling any. So we partnered them to use a whole different range of cuts to balance across that carcass to ensure that they had a range of price points on their menu that could manage their profitability and kept red meat at pride of place on their venues. So just an example of stuff we do there to drive real-world commercial returns back to industry. And then obviously we also leverage food service as a channel to ensure that our brand campaigns have a bigger impact. So whether that's with Summer Lamb, partnering with lamb activity to ensure it's top of mind, not just through retail and butcher environments, but actually also on menu in restaurants, or partnering with organisations like Marley Spoon with the growth of the delivery business and the meal kits to ensure that beef and lamb have a significant presence in that space as well. Or leveraging for the limited amount of work we do on veal with a much smaller pool of levy dollars to spend around National Schnitzel Day, and reminding people that the original schnitzel actually was a veal schnitzel, not a chicken schnitzel. So we really like to make sure that we also leverage our brand campaigns and the timing of those into the food service channels as well. And a bit of a combination of that is a really cool thing we're going to do this summer. So beef has an incredibly strong presence in the food service channel. Lamb, historically, lamb had a really strong presence. Lamb's a little bit challenged as through COVID, where meal menus have been simplified. Your beef steaks have stayed on there because they're the core items. Your beef burgers have stayed on there, are the core items. But increasingly, we're seeing the lamb options reduced to 1 or 2 on a menu. And QSR is usually really challenging for lamb because they're all trying to hit a price point and it's all quick serve, fast serve. But we're trialling a concept with the MCG, which will open on Boxing Day this year. With an actual specialist lamb outlet. So Sam Burke and his team, in partnership with the suppliers and providers of the food outlets in the MCG, have developed this concept of the lamb paddock, and there'll be a lamb burger, there'll be a lamb tasting plate, and there'll be a lamb something else that I can't remember off the top of my head. And that will run not just through the Boxing Day test, but it'll actually run through the whole AFL season. And it's a bit of a test and learn. It's not our outlet, we're not opening it. The people who have the license to operate the food outlets at the MCG are operating it. We've just partnered with them to help them design their menu so lamb can actually have a role in a quick serve, fast service outlet to prove the model that will hopefully then see lamb have a greater presence throughout the rest of QSR. And we are also looking to do something similar with beef in the new year as well. So watch this space. Just quickly, what's happening in the market? I do realise I'm going over time, Sam. I apologise. Lucy saved lots of time and I'm now using it all up. Category volume. Category volume's going down, but those grey charts are the total. Those grey bars are the total category. It's really just normalised post-COVID. So it's kind of settled back at where it was pre-COVID when the retail environment got the boost of food service being closed and people stock loading in and out of supermarkets. So it's going down, but it's behaviour that we would expect to see. We have seen beef volume decline quite substantially, but that's really a factor of price. Lamb has actually remained relatively stable on a volume basis. When we look at spend and value, actually the beef picture is pretty good. It's still increasing. People are spending more money on beef than they used to. That decline on volume is exactly what you would expect to see with that scale of price per kilogram increase. So I don't necessarily look at that as something that we should be overly concerned about, but it does mean we need to double down on our efforts around midweek meals and that good value, ease of preparation meal occasion, which is the key battleground versus chicken, which is the volume game. But a good picture, our shares are going up on a value basis, and you can see that long-term smoothed over the last 2 years. Lamb's gone up slightly, beef a little bit more. Chicken's actually increasing in the near term, but actually declining still on a long-term basis. So net, a pretty good picture for red meat and the health of our product from a consumption and market perspective. And I knew I wouldn't be able to get off the stage without at least mentioning plant-based. The story around plant-based is really good for us. Why don't you see anything that relates to plant-based in our brand marketing campaigns? It's because it's not really a threat. So it's capped out at 0.4% of the category, which makes it incredibly niche. It has now had 2 consecutive periods of penetration decline, which means less and less households. So everyone's trialled it, but it tapped out at just above 17%. Penetration of plant-based is now down at 14.5%. On the last 12 months, value sales of plant-based proteins have declined 11%, and in the last quarter they've declined 19%. So everything says it's reached its level, and its level is really, really small, and it's not something we should be concerned about. When we look at switching behaviour, people are not leaving beef and lamb to go to plant-based. The people that we are seeing switching are actually switching amongst animal proteins. They're not leaving animal proteins to go to plant-based. It's something people are either buying into regularly as a really niche audience who wouldn't normally buy us anyway, or people who've swapped out a meal occasion to try it, and the data and insights tell us that they don't like it that much, and they're coming back to us. In fact, the last period, beef saw its first net gain from plant-based ever since it was launched into the category, which says people are coming back to us, and that's a battle that we don't need to attack them because they're already losing it on their own. And it's a really good story for us. So before I hand over to Scott to talk about some of the key insights driving demand in the international markets, just a reminder, we're really well positioned around what's happening from a market trends perspective. People are looking for value. They want to buy better. Our product's high quality. We have a range of price points within the different cuts people can buy into. Where people are familiar with our product, certainly on beef. They're expanding their repertoires, they're exploring choices. People have great quality experiences with us. They love the sensorial, the taste, the flavour, etc. People want to buy more of our product. They just got to manage their budget. And we have a really strong story around health and nutrition. So as that becomes more top of mind and important to people, we're well positioned to take advantage of that. And now as I hand over to Scott, who runs our insights team globally, you'll actually see that some of these trends are consistent across markets worldwide.